Russia wants to destroy Ukraine's army. And if it cannot do it militarily, it tries to do it politically. The most recent attempt came through the 28-point peace plan. Yes, the one presented by the US, but allegedly drafted by Russians. There is a lot in it that would reward Russian aggression, with many calling it a plan of Ukraine's capitulation. But I want to focus on this one point. The original 28-point proposal would require Ukraine to cap its armed forces to 600,000 from the currently estimated 800,000, which is a crazy demand for a country defending itself. But it does raise the question, could this actually be a silver lining, a sacrifice that isn't actually a sacrifice? And if yes, then why are Ukrainians so opposed to this? Prior to Russia's full-scale invasion, Ukraine had around 200,000 active duty personnel in its military. In military theory and practice, attackers usually suffer higher losses and therefore need a larger force to succeed. How many troops did Russian President Vladimir Putin actually allocate to his so-called special military operation? According to different estimations, no more than 200,000. And what if Putin had been successful? According to standard military figures, an occupier needs 20 soldiers per 1,000 inhabitants to maintain control. So that would mean 820,000 troops to occupy a nation of 41 million as of 2022. And these are Ukrainians we are talking about, whose history and temperament suggest he might want to dial up that ratio a bit more. It is clear that Putin had overestimated either the support for Russia within Ukraine or was overconfident in a rapid decapitation of Kyiv. As it became clear Ukraine would not fall within days, the two sides came to Istanbul in June 2022 to negotiate. The topic at hand? Ceasefire. And what were Russia's demands? Ukraine must reduce its peacetime army to just 85,000 and abandon NATO membership, among other demands. Moscow was trying to ensure that Ukraine would be even more defenseless than in 2022 in case of another renewed Russian invasion. But the negotiations ended without an agreement, and Russia had to go back to trying to destroy Ukraine's army by military means again. Fast forward to 2025, it still hasn't succeeded, with both armies better trained, more experienced, and far larger. For Russia's part, it has heavily invested in its war effort to keep pace with its losses, which Ukraine tallies at over 1 million casualties. Putin has increased the number of troops invading Ukraine to 700,000 and called to increase the overall number of active servicemen to 1.5 million. For Ukraine's part, it has grown its military to over 800,000, according to the official figures. It's difficult today to imagine Ukraine reducing its armed forces to 600,000, as proposed by Trump's team, while it continues to defend against Russia. But if a peace agreement is struck, many experts say that Ukraine would realistically reduce its army anyway. Ukraine's army is not a professional army. It largely consists of civilians that have volunteered or were called up to fight. And after years of non-stop fighting, they're exhausted and would want to be demobilized in peacetime. Ukraine also doesn't have enough military infrastructure to keep all these troops at training bases, nor is Ukraine emerging from this war in a strong economic position. And 600,000 doesn't seem too big of a reduction, and is still 3 times more than what Ukraine had in 2022. Some, like the Center for Strategic and International Studies, expect that number to fall even below 600,000. This is Oleksiy Hetman, a Ukrainian military analyst and retired major, who has his own assessment.
Під час війни нам необхідно ще більше людей на сьогоднішній день. Після завершення війни одразу ми теж не будемо скорочувати наші Збройні Сили і на завершення припинення, бо Росія може будь-який час напасти знову. Коли будуть певні, зрозумілі нам гарантії безпеки, тоді ми зможемо зменшити кількість наших Збройних Сил до 200-300 тисяч. Це, коли нема бойових дій, треба постійно проводити навчання, постійно тренуватися. У нас нема стільки полігонів, щоб мільйон людей постійно тренувалися. Це навіщо вам в такої кількості воно потрібно.
And yet, while drafting a revised peace plan together with the US, Ukraine agreed to put the cap on its army at 800,000 maximum, meaning about its current size. So if reducing the army is a likely prospect anyway, why are Ukrainians so opposed to it? Many in Ukraine believe that a strong, well-equipped and well-trained army is the only real security guarantee that the country can count on after a peace deal is struck. NATO membership is clearly off the table, as it is one of the key demands for Russia. But even if the US or Europe offer any kind of other security guarantees to Ukraine to prevent Russia from invading again, Ukrainians are skeptical about the West actually following through. Ukraine had to learn the hard way that a security agreement might not actually guarantee any security. In 1994, Ukraine signed the Budapest Memorandum, agreeing to voluntarily surrender its Soviet-era nuclear weapons for security assurances from the United States, Great Britain, and Russia. Yes, the same Russia that attacked Ukraine 20 years later, while the US and the UK obviously didn't rush to defend it.
В нас вже були і Будапештські меморандуми, і багато чого, стільки всього підписано з різними країнами, і сенсу від цього ніякого немає. Ми маємо розуміти, що в разі нападу до нас приєднаються армії, європейські країни, краще ще Сполучені Штати, приєднаються до бойових дій по відсічу агресії. І це має бути договор, який ми з ними підпишемо, і який буде ратифікований в Сполучених Штатах Конгресом.
It might be challenging for Ukraine to maintain its current army size, but with Russia maintaining 1.5 million active military personnel, Ukraine needs to be ready. No one will forget the past 4, or rather the last 12 years since Russia first invaded. The question will always linger in our minds. What if Russia attacks again? So what are Ukraine's options? Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky suggested the post-war future country might look like a big Israel. What does this mean?
Неможливо чітко перенести правила однієї країни на іншу країну, один в один, калькувати, але взяти, як то кажуть, до уваги, як мають бути резервісти, як вони мають бути готові. Це люди з 18 років, і це обов'язково чоловіки та жінки. Люди, які менше 18 років, які навчаються в школах, мають бути курси так званої початкової військової підготовки. Тоді ми отримуємо суспільство, яке об'єднане думкою про власну державу, про власну націю, морально готове, емоційно готове дати відсіч будь-якому ворогу.
In response to Hamas's attack on October 7, 2023, Israel was able to mobilize 300,000 reservists within 48 hours. One military analyst considers Israel's cold start capability unrivaled anywhere in the world. And that was in response to Hamas, a far less equipped threat compared to a nuclear-armed Russia. For Ukraine, Hetman believes they will need to keep 1 million trained civilians in reserve.
Можливість і розуміння того, що ми готові всі разом битися за нашу країну, це і є той стержень, який має об'єднати наше суспільство. І таку країну при такому підході, коли так станеться, не якщо так станеться, а коли так станеться, так обов'язково станеться. Ну да, і армія 200-300 тисяч, які рівень фаховості зашкалює, як то кажуть. То бажання напасти на таку країну, я думаю, що не буде. І велика, більше мільйона резерву, які може бути долучені за декілька діб у разі початку чи загрози початку бойових дій з боку будь-якої країни.
But here is the catch. We still don't know all the details of the proposed peace plan being debated between the US, Ukraine and Russia. For example, what exactly counts toward the cap? Does it include military reserves? If so, then Ukraine would be in a far weaker position. Russia is unlikely to repeat the same mistakes it made in 2022. It is unlikely to commit as few soldiers next time it invades. But Ukraine has also learned its lessons. It is today stronger than it has ever been in its history. And it's unlikely to go back from here. When Russia launched the largest war in Europe since World War II, we, at the Kyiv Independent, stayed here, on the ground, to keep the world informed. we had only formed months prior. And then we found ourselves not just normal reporters, but at the front lines, not only of a war, but of a media independent from any government, oligarchs, or anyone else. It is thanks to you all that we can do what we do. This may look simple, just me speaking to a camera. But what you don't see is the dozens and dozens of people off screen, from journalists gathering the information, the videographers shooting and cutting this video, and so many more. But we need your help. We are trying to reach our goal of 25,000 community members by the end of the year. And we have so many great ideas for 2026, but we will need your support. Please go to the link in the description below to become a member for as little as $5 a month. Let's do it together.